When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject: Ape Canyon. User: Seaman01. Posted June 25, 1996.
Every step Murray took on the trail caused his rucksack to waltz up and down his back, revealing a swatch of sweaty ass crack I'd already seen too many times. Along with Barry, who was hiking fourth in our convoy, behind my new girlfriend Marcy and ahead of his own girl Lori, I'd been on dozens of camping trips with the skinny, impossibly strong loudmouth currently leading us into the woods of the Pacific Northwest. The straps of my own heavily laden backpack bit into my shoulders, competing with the oppressive heat and clouds of mosquitoes for most annoying part of the journey so far. How much further, Murray? It's been an hour at least. You tired, Corey? How about you, Marcy? You tired? Chipper as ever, she called out from behind me. I can do this all day. Murray laughed. I bet you can. He was always like this when either Barry or I got a new girlfriend. Murray was perpetually single and liked to pretend he was above dating, except when we were seeing someone, and then he'd try to impress them. Or intimidate them, should they not be the impressible type. If we hadn't been friends since high school, when we took our first camping trips together, I'd have long ago stopped picking up the phone when he called. What had been monthly excursions in our teens and early 20s were turned by the responsibility of adulthood into annual ones. Murray was the self-styled outdoorsman among us and would choose the location. Craters of the Moon in Idaho in '92, Zion the year later. His obsession with our dating lives sometimes factored into his choices. Back when Barry first got together with his ex Bonnie, a leggy tennis pro, we ended up on some ant-infested lake island in Canada. A tiny fucker's bit, too. All so Murray could keep loudly saying, within earshot of Bonnie, how little the ants bothered him. Marcy and I weren't exactly a new couple. We'd met during the previous winter, but she had yet to be properly introduced to the guys. Murray had announced this year's destination shortly after finding out about us, so I had been hesitant when he said he would be going to Ape Canyon, southeast of Mount St. Helens in Washington State. True to form, he didn't tell us the truth until it was way too late to back out. Our hike lasted a full 2 hours, bypassing the public campsite, which Murray described huffily as being for amateurs. Eventually, the trail petered out and we were bushwhacking until the canopy had knit overhead into a kind of green tunnel. I'd been about ready to ask my friend if he knew where the hell we were going when the crush of the forest gave way to a sunny clearing at the edge of a small lake. Marcy cooed in appreciation, and I caught the quick grin it provoked on our fearless leader's face. Aside from that kind of typical Murray assholery, he behaved reasonably well for the rest of the day, setting up his tent and starting the campfire with his usual laser focus. The other shoe didn't drop until after dark, as we all sat around the campfire. So, Murray looked around at us theatrically. Do any of you know why this place is called Ape Canyon? Marcy and Lori gamely shook their heads. Barry and I exchanged weary glances. Here it came. Up until the 20s, gold prospectors used to come out here to pan. An old legend is what brought them of a huge natural cache hidden somewhere along the ridgeline behind us. Dozens, some say even hundreds of men combed through these woods looking for signs of what they believed was their fortune. If only they could just find it. The obvious question hung in the air until Marcy asked it. What changed in the 20s? Murray grinned, the fire shadow dancing across his face. I'm glad you asked, Marcy. You see, in 1924, this wasn't called Ape Canyon. It didn't have a name at all until 4 prospectors came out here determined to find that gold. Since going in and out was so difficult, they decided to build themselves a little cabin, not so far from this very campsite. Then, while out in deep bush, they spotted a line of what looked like giant gorillas, 7, 8 feet tall, covered with thick black hair. Oh, for fuck's sake. Really, Murray, we're out here because of a Bigfoot story. Not just any Bigfoot story, Corey. The Bigfoot story, because these prospectors like you couldn't handle nature's majesty and they lost their cool. One fired 4 shots with his rifle, hitting one of the animals 3 times center mass. It didn't kill him, of course, at least not the bullets. It turned out that they were closer to the canyon's edge than they realized, and the impact was enough to send him over. They say the other 3 animals, wails of grief, shook the ground itself. And what did our prospectors do? They hightailed it back to their cabin, but that was a mistake. Do you know why, Marcy? She shook her head, rapt. I rolled my eyes. Because the apes followed them, and when night fell, they pelted the flimsy wooden cabin with stones, rattling it to pieces. They never made a sound. It was like they were part of the dark itself, able to move wherever it happened to be. The guns clutched in their prospectors' hands were the only thing keeping them safe. The question was, would their ammunition last until dawn? And what would happen if it didn't? Marcy leaned against me, taking my hand. Murray's smile faltered for just a second. What happened? Did their ammunition hold out? Lori looked even more engaged than Marcy. She had Barry's arm in a death grip. It did. The first rays of sunrise dispersed the darkness, and the apes with it. When our prospectors finally came out of what was left of their cabin, they found stones bigger than softballs piled against the timber. Even worse were the footprints, 2 feet long and 4 inches deep, stomped into the dirt of the tree line. That was the end of their prospecting here and the beginning of Ape Canyon. Christ. And let me guess, no one's seen the apes since. I asked the question out of annoyance, but the look in Murray's eyes suggested it was exactly what he'd hoped I'd do. Oh no, they've seen them. Why do you think the public campground is so close to the trailhead? No one comes back here anymore. The few who have never make the same mistake twice. Why? Marcy's voice was high and tight. I took a deep breath. It wasn't her fault. He had set all this up to produce exactly this result. Because the apes tear him apart. Imagine how much they hate us. Generation after generation, growing up being taught how easy the hairless beasts who encroach on their domain are to rip limb from limb. The only people who survive Ape Canyon are the ones who speak the language of dominance, who have the gift. Quickly, he reached down into the backpack at his feet, pulling out a gleaming pistol. The gift of steel. Murray pointed the gun at the woods behind him and fired off 3 shots in rapid succession. The girl's screams were almost as loud as the deafening reports. Murray, he just laughed and laughed and laughed. That ended the party, and in typical fashion, he claimed not to understand why. As we bear-proofed our food, Murray muttered about how no one could take a joke anymore. I was too angry to respond, and the last thing I saw before following Marcy into our tent was him sitting by the fire, gun in his lap and a sour look on his face. I had no idea how much time had passed when I heard Marcy say, "Corey, wake up." Her mouth couldn't have been any closer to my ear, her voice a hissed whisper. Soothing her after Murray's stunt was no easy thing, and by the time she'd nodded off, I'd made the decision that this would be my final boys' trip with that fucking clown. Our tent wasn't as dark as it should have been. The still burning campfire casting shifting shadows through the orange canvas of our tent. "What's wrong?" I whispered back. Her eyes were wide. I'd never seen her like this. "Something is outside. Listen." I rubbed the sleep from my eyes. All I could hear was the crackle and snap of burning firewood. The fire's still lit. It's probably just Murray. She twisted her slender hands together hard, like she was wringing out an old dishcloth. "No, it's not. I heard a cracking sound. Then something hit the ground. Something heavy." It was that story. Fuck me. "Babe, if anything, it's him dicking around out there. He's hoping if he can be just creepy enough, someone will wake up. I'll go talk to him." I reached for the tent zipper. Marcy stopped me. She was trembling. "Corey, I think something is really wrong." For a moment, her intensity became infectious, and I felt a twinge of uncertainty. I pushed it back down. There was no reason to think this was any different than any other time we'd been out in the bush with Murray. She just wasn't used to how far he could push it. "Trust me, babe. He does this whenever one of us gets a new girlfriend. He pushes buttons. He thinks it makes him better than everyone else." She released her grip, but the doubt in her eyes stayed. "Please be careful." I gave her a kiss I hoped was reassuring and pulled open the zipper, jumping a little at how loud it seemed in the otherwise quiet night. It wasn't any cooler outside the tent than it had been inside. From where I was standing, I could see flames licking upwards to the sky, but no Murray. His chair was on its side, the top half hidden behind the wide metal fire pit. Barry and Lori were camped out next to us. Both peered out at me. I waved. "Did he wake you guys up too?" Marcy thought she heard something. Barry spoke first. "I heard it. Is he out there?" I shook my head. Since everybody was already awake, there wasn't any point in keeping my voice down. "All right, Murray, you got us. Creepy noises in Ape Canyon. Let me guess. Something threw a rock at you from the woods." No response. I rolled my eyes. Barry sighed and came out to join me. Lori stayed behind, holding the tent's opening close to the sides of her face. Together, he and I moved toward the fire. Murray, come on, man. You made this shit bad enough already. Don't be a dick. It turned out Murray wasn't being a dick. He wasn't anything anymore. We rounded the fire pit to find him laying next to his upturned chair, one side of his skull crumpled inward, pulped like a rotten melon. It didn't take much deduction as to what had caused the situation either. The softball-sized stone covered in bright red blood speckled with pink and white flecks. Oh, fuck. Barry stumbled backward, hand over his mouth. Oh, fuck, oh, fuck, oh, fuck, oh, fuck. He was white from the neck up. Corey? Marcy shouted from behind me. What's going on? I couldn't speak. Instead, I feebly waved a hand in what was intended as a stay-back gesture, but came out more as a spastic twitch. My eyes swept the grotesque scene, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. He looked the same as he had when we went to bed, that same pissy frown locked in place. I finally saw it then. The one change in the scene, aside from the obvious, the gun he'd pulled as part of his prank, the one which had been on his lap, was gone.
Subject, the beach. User, runner123. Posted, August 12, 1998.
It was late June, and the beach smelled like salt, copper tone, and charcoal smoke drifting from a rusted grill somewhere up on the shore. I wasn't there to swim, just walking. No destination, just my usual slow pace, feet sinking with each step. That last hour of daylight cast everything in a syrupy glow, gold and soft and slow, and I remember thinking how peaceful it all felt. Radios played somewhere off in the distance. Pearl Jam or Tom Petty, maybe. I don't know. It was fuzzy over the breeze, just another noise competing with the steady crash of the waves. That's when I saw them, the family. He looked like something from a J.C. Penney catalog. Khaki shorts, a sunburned neck, one of those t-shirts from a beach gift shop. His arms were toned in that way dads get from hoisting toddlers in beach bags. He was laughing, tossing a Nerf football back and forth with his son in the surf. The boy couldn't have been older than 6 or 7, squealing every time the ball splashed beside him. A few feet away, a little girl crouched by the tide pools, waving a shell and calling to her mom, who sat on a striped beach towel, cross-legged with a thick paperback in her lap and a wide straw hat shading her face. She wasn't really reading, just soaking up the sun and watching him with this warm, quiet smile. It wasn't that she already had everything she could ever possibly want. She was actually there, present, enjoying it. And that is when it hit me. Not anger, at least not yet. Something quieter, like a soft punch to the chest from the inside out. I watched him and felt a dull ache rise in my ribs. I thought of my own childhood, the stale apartments, the yelling, the cold leftovers. My mom was always too tired, her boyfriend's too loud. I don't remember anyone ever playing catch with me. I don't remember being looked at the way that woman looked at her kids. Like joy was something you could touch. I sat down in the sand, elbows on my knees, and tried to let it pass. Told myself I was tired, that the past is just a story we tell ourselves, that I was fine now. But the ache didn't leave. It grew, soured, turned into something mean and quiet, curling in my gut like a fist. Next thing I knew, I was standing, walking through the surf. I don't remember deciding to do it, but one second I was sitting there and the next I was knee-deep in water, my hands clenched, heart thudding. The man had his back to me, still tossing the ball to his son, still smiling, and then I was on him. I grabbed his shoulders and shoved him under. He twisted, came up sputtering, confused, flailing. What the hell, man? I pushed him down again, harder. The boy screamed, a high, shrill thing that cut through the crash of the surf. His father kicked beneath me, fought like hell, but I held him down. My hands did not feel like mine. My body was moving without me, like I was submerged somewhere deeper, watching it all happen from behind a thick sheet of glass. The woman was running now, yelling. I couldn't hear what she said. I barely heard anything. The world was muffled and slow. And then he went still. That was when it broke. Like waking from a sleepwalk, I stepped back, the water sloshed around my knees, and his body floated in front of me, face up, eyes wide, mouth open. People were screaming, rushing into the waves. I turned and ran. I didn't stop until I was back at my apartment. Bare walls, a rattling fan in the window, and dishes still in the sink from the night before. I locked the door, turned off every light, curled up on the bathroom floor, and stayed there until dawn. That was 3 days ago. I've been watching the news since. They're looking for someone. No sketch yet. Witnesses said it happened too fast. One of them mentioned a man in his 30s, average build, dark hair. That's half the damn country. Honestly, I still don't know why I did it. I wasn't drunk, wasn't high. I'd had a turkey sandwich and a can of soda. That's it. I didn't know the guy, didn't plan it, didn't even feel anything when it happened. Just that awful static, that pulse of something bigger than me, like I'd been hollowed out and filled with something else. Now, I sit here and I wonder, do I turn myself in? Walk into the sheriff's office, say the words out loud, I killed a man and I don't know why. Do I let them lock me up and maybe keep whatever lives in me caged too? Or do I go somewhere else other than jail? Somewhere quiet with candles and cold stone floors and a man in a white collar who might listen, might tell me this thing can be forgiven, might tell me it can't. I don't know. I just know I see that boy's face when I try to sleep and I hear the waves louder than they should be.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.